What's up guys, welcome to my channel. Basically this is my first YouTube video here, and I just thought as a sort of introduction video I would do something quite basic just so you can get to know my opinions on racing and stuff like that. So I decided to do rating Formula E drivers. As you can see, quick disclaimer, the ratings are only based on their Formula E performances. That will become more apparent as the video continues. So I'm just going to quickly explain the categories that we have. Firstly, qualifying and race. Pretty straightforward, I would say. Qualifying, how good they are over the one lap, like how many super poles have they got to, stuff like that, how they've performed versus the performance of their car. And yeah, race is a similar thing. Awareness, yeah, how often do they crash or make contact? Because we know in Formula E there's a lot of rubbing, and essentially I'm just sort of giving my opinion on whether it's necessary or unnecessary rubbing. Overtaking, how good their overtakes, how clean are their overtakes. In a way this kind of intertwines with awareness, because it's like clean overtakes equals less making contact, so higher awareness. Defending, how good they are on the brakes, how late they can brake, and acceleration, have key traction zones in order to keep other cars behind. And then what I would say is sort of the most interesting category, and one which I've probably rated the worst, well, I've done the worst, experience. And this is basically a combination of how many Formula E races they've done and how much racing they've done over the course of their career as a whole. I think that's a fairly lengthy intro, so now we're just going to get into it. 28 drivers, so get ready, get a cup of tea, whatever, drink, because this could take a while. We're going to start off, these are in not really any particular order. Audi. So we have Lucas Di Grassi here. I've given him an 87 overall. Key stats, overtaking. Whenever Lucas does qualify near the back, whether that's because he's Group 1 and he's just made a mistake in his lap, whatever, I feel like he always gets through the field quite well. So for that reason I've given him a high overtaking stat. I've also given him low awareness, and this is because particularly in the Berlin finale I've noticed he tries to squeeze other cars when they're overtaking him, but he always does it to a point where there's contact, and I feel like he's spun a lot, whether that's his fault or someone else's. He's always in a lot of incidents, so I put the awareness quite low. And then 96 experience. Di Grassi drove a Formula E car before Formula E existed, so couldn't really be much lower than that. Next we have Rene Rast, who I know he finished the season off well, but I don't think it's fair to give him as high a rating as Di Grassi over 6 races. We saw he qualified well in those final 2 rounds where he got big points, and his race pace was decent. Overtaking, I've given him quite high. That move on Lotterer, very punchy in my opinion, and that was good. Experience, 60. He's only done 6 Formula E races, but from what I've heard, I think 2-time DTM champion, so he's very decorated outside of Formula E, and I think that deserves some sort of experience. Moving on to the BMWs now. Alexander Sims firstly. Now look, Sims, 3 poles in a row from the end of the season before and the start of this year. 88 qualifying, I think, is more than fair. There's not really much else to say about Sims. He's a decent driver. Probably lacking a bit of consistency, and that's what will get him a title. Then we move on to his teammate, Max Günther. Second youngest driver on the grid now that Sette Camera's here. So that experience, that kind of down levels him. I really like Günther. I think he's a good driver. He always, when he has the chance, can qualify nicely. And he's quite a punchy overtaker. He's better in the race. He's better attacking than he is defensive though. And as we saw from the 2 races after he won, his awareness isn't that great. We saw he was at the back for the first time, turn 4 at the start of the race, and he just completely misjudges everyone else's braking point, plows into them, end of his race. Yeah, so not really much else to say on the BMW guys. Now we go on to the Cheetahs. These guys, I'd say, best team on the grid. They're the team to beat. Everyone needs to catch the Cheetah. I'm going to start off with the reigning world champion, Antonio Felix Acosta. I think this year he's been outstanding. His qualifying has been good. When he has come from near the back, he's always managed to get through and get a few points. I remember in Diriyah, I think it was, he had a drive-through penalty, and I think he might have even come back to get points in that race. Don't quote me on that though. Been in Formula E for a long time. What I would say though, that sort of downgrades his experience a bit. He was in a pretty poor Aguri car at the start of his career. He's ended up being equal to his teammate Jean-Eric Vergne in overall, which I feel like is fair, even though points might not prove it, because Jeb's been very unlucky this year. When he first came to Formula E, I remember he pole. He's a really good qualifier. He's still got a bit of that, but it's not as good as it was before. A6 overtaking, that's because sometimes he does crash. Or he's not as punchy as Da Costa, which I feel is a key attribute in Formula E. Virgin guys now. Starting off with Robin Frijns. I think Robin Frijns is a decent driver. I think I might have done him a bit dirty here. He's a decent driver, Frijns. When he has a chance, again, he's a nice qualifier. He's always quite a punchy overtaker. He's been in Formula E for a while, but not perhaps as long as others, which is why his experience is down at 72. Next, Sam Bird. Look, Sam, commentators really like him. I'm not as keen on Sam Bird. Don't get me wrong, he's a good overtaker. He's a very good overtaker. But last year, I remember, he was retired from like 6, 7, 8 races in a row. That's way too much. And they can't all be from people for other people's fault. So his awareness stat has to be down there, which is why it's only at 79. He's a good driver overall though. Now we've gone to the Mahindras. First team that we've had so far, they've had 3 drivers over the course of this year. Jerome D'Ambrosio to start with. He's a solid enough driver, Jerome. I feel like he's never really been in a super quick car, so I can't really make him like top tier, like with the Jebs and the Da Costas, the De Grassis. He's a decent driver. Pascal Wehrlein, interesting one here, because he's signed with Porsche now, and I don't know if this is related, but that might be why he didn't come back with Mahindra for the finale. When he first came, he really burst onto the scene. I think he nearly won in Mexico City, which was like his second race. It was just over-consuming energy that ended up with him not winning. And I think if Pascal was to stay in Formula E, he could definitely become a world champion. I think he's got it in him. The only thing sort of holding his rating back here is his experience. And then we move on to Alex Lynn, the perennial substitute driver, I'd call him. Always gets a seat when someone gets dropped. And I think he's a solid enough driver. You know, he's done quite a few races. Decent, well-rounded. Nothing spectacular though. That's the thing with Alex Lynn. Nothing spectacular. Nah. Neo 333. I mean, well, firstly, excuse the cropping on Turvey's face. That's like white overalls, white background. That was a nightmare. But anyway, it's just been a nightmare season for them. Slow car, but I think at the end of it, they have come out with 2 good drivers. Oliver Turvey, again, decent driver. You can sometimes get that Neo up near the top 10 in qualifying, but just can't stay in the race. Not energy efficient enough and just not downright quick enough. Do we really have to talk about Mark Inghar? Probably doesn't deserve his space on the grid, let's be honest. He was pretty much always last of the runners who were running without faults. I don't think he has what it takes to be in Formula E, to be honest. And in a way, I'm glad he got replaced by Daniel Abt, but I don't know if that's permanent. Abt won races at that Audi team, competed with Lucas Di Grassi. Even though he was always pretty much the number 2, he was always a decent driver for them, and I feel like I've reflected that in his rating here. He's been around for a while, proved a lot of people wrong at the start. They thought he was just a paid driver, just paid his way into the what was Audi's seat before the race at home scandal. But I think Apt's a decent driver. Moving on now to the Nissans, we've got Ollie Rowland. Took his first race victory, 2 races, penultimate race of the season for Nissan. He's a decent driver. Whether he's top tier world champion material, I'm not too sure. We saw last year he got a lot of poles, a lot of good qualifying, and he was never really able to capitalise on it. This year his qualifying's kind of dropped off, and he's been better in the races this year. I will give him that, but it's just about whether he can find that balance, and at the moment I'm not sure whether he can. We then move on to Sebastian Buemi, who's same rating as DaCosta Verne, and I think Buemi's a good driver. I think if Nissan were to be able to push on next year, it would be him challenging those Techeetahs for the World Championship. Most poles in the history of Formula E, been there since day one. I'd say very well-rounded driver. Sometimes he's not very punchy. Before the final 2 rounds, he'd actually only made like 8 proper overtakes in like the rest of the, I don't even know, it might have been whole season, but I'm pretty sure it was just the 4 Berlin races before. 8 overtakes is a bit low. Now we move on to the Dragons, who have, I'm not gonna lie, really disappointed me, especially in Berlin, because they were up there in qualifying. Sete Camara especially. He always had the pace in qualifying, and I'd say he's a good driver. The only thing that's weighing him down here is that experience. What's he done, like 4, 5, 6 races, young kid, that's always what's going to weigh him down. There's definitely a good driver inside Sergio Sete Camara, and if Giox can keep hold of him, give him a better car, they can get points with him. Brendan Hartley, on the other hand, really underwhelmed me in his time in Formula E. He felt he was hard done by after not getting an F1 drive, but based on what he's done in FE, he probably doesn't deserve it. He didn't qualify well. He was all right in the race. He got there only points, but yeah, Brendan Hartley, not quite there in my opinion. Finally, Nico Müller. Nico Müller's also quite disappointing in my eyes. He won the DTM race like a week before Formula E started, and then he's come to Formula E, and compared to his teammate, who's like a proper rookie, he's been pretty much nowhere. Müller's been in the car all year, and again, he's qualified nicely, but races just fallen back a bit, I'd say. Moving on to the Jaguars now. We'll start off with the Kiwi, Mitch Evans. Again, I feel like he's a very good driver, and if Jaguar and him could get more consistent, they could maybe push the likes of Di Grassi, Buemi, Verne, all for the title next year. Experience is the only thing that I'd say is slightly lacking on him. He's been there a while, but he's not been there quite long enough to be a sort of a long-time experienced driver. Qualifying is also a bit shaky sometimes. Never really, even though he's not in Group 1, he never can really push for Superpole. James Collado, he's another very average driver, I feel. I think looking at these stats in hindsight, I might have actually done him quite nicely, especially experience. I'm not really sure about that, but I think I've done Collado quite nicely there. He picked up a few points in his time in Formula E, but overall underperformed, and that's why he's got dropped to Sam Byrne next year. And now, final Jaguar driver is Tom Blomqvist. Now look, he raced 2 races. That's the first time I've ever seen him. I couldn't really rate him. He qualified nicely. He did have some track evolution. Always fell back in the races. Don't really know what else to say about Blomqvist. Now onto the Porsches. Lotterer. I feel like other than win a race, Lotterer has pretty much done everything in Formula E. He looks quick. He looks like Porsche's leading man. And alongside Pascal Wehrlein next year, I reckon they're going to have a really decent team. He's punchy, but not really punchy enough. Because sometimes he does get hit out. Always good at defending though. I remember last year when he kept Bird behind him for the whole race in China, one of the Chinese races. Only for Bird to crush him out on the last lap, take away his maiden victory. Neil Jarni. Now again, he was pretty poor throughout the year. And although he came good in those final 2 races, his seat was long gone before then, long gone. I feel like it was the qualifying and the overtaking that really let him down, because his pace in the races, you saw when he's at the front, his pace in the races was fine. He could keep up to a certain degree, but I just don't feel like Nirajani and Formula E are a good match. He's a quick driver, but I don't feel like he's a Formula E driver. Now we're moving on to our penultimate team, the Venturis. Edo Mortara, I really like him. I think he's a good driver. The Venturi car, not been the greatest this year. It's been a decent car, and that's why Mortara's been able to get like 30-40 odd points out of it, but it's not quite top tier. Defensively, he doesn't sort of push people as hard as I feel he could. So that's why he's slightly lower there. Then we go on to ex-F1 driver Felipe Massa, who I feel like has really, really underwhelmed in his time in Formula E. I don't feel like he's been as good as we've all seen he can be in F1. Now that he's had these 2 years, I think it is, in Formula E, he's done pretty much it. He knows all the racing. That's why he's got 96 experience. I know you could argue someone like Lotterer could have higher experience, but my bad. I don't know what else to say about that. Yeah, I feel overtaking wise, Massa not quite there. He doesn't really like the punchy sort of rubbing his racing attitude of Formula E. And whether it's worth him staying or whether it's just prolonging a career, I'm not too sure. Now on to our final team here, my favourite team, Mercedes-Benz EQ. Currently driver lineup is reigning F2 World Champion Nick De Vries, who I think has done extraordinarily in his rookie year. Been unlucky quite a few times, especially at the start of the season with a lot of like regulation breaks which aren't really in his control. He's always qualified nicely. I think over the course of the Berlin finale he was like the 3rd best qualifier-ish. And we saw on that overtake on Buemi in the last race, he can clearly overtake the lad. 25, 26 years old, something like that. So he's had a fair bit of general racing experience, but this is his first year in FE, and I can only give him a 50 experience rating for that, which sort of brings him down from what could be like an 84, 85 rate driver. And we're going to end off with my favourite driver in all of Formula E, Stoffel Vandoorne. I'd say throughout his whole Formula E career, he's been a good qualifier. We saw last year, he drive that HWA up into Super Bowl. Granted a few times through track evolution, but he always outperformed Paffett, even in qualifying. So his qualifying isn't top tier, but it's good. It's good. We've seen him get a couple of poles. Overtaking, we've seen him come through from the back, and he's like cut his way through 18th to 9th, 14th to 5th, 13th to 7th or whatever. He had those 3 results, fastest laps in there. And that also plays into his racecraft or racing. I feel like in Vandoorne, Mercedes has got one of the best race drivers in Formula E. Defensively, yeah, that's more last year where he showcased his defensive talents when he dragged that HWA up into like a 7th, 8th, 4th qualifying, even though the race pace is probably down to 14th. And a fair few times he did manage to get points. We all know he got that podium in Rome as well, which is really good. But again, the thing weighing him down, his experience. He's 28 years old. He's won pretty much every series he's competed in other than F1 and FE. Maybe also Super Formula, but I don't know if he was full-time there. So yeah, his experience brings him down there. And that is the final driver. So guys, I'd just like to say thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your mates who like Formula E. And yeah, see you in the next one.